Hi, I'm Andrew Spieler.
And I'm Mary Hope Rennie.
And you're watching or listening to Behind the Sign, real stories from real estate. So welcome back to another episode. We don't have any special guests today. I'm sorry. We only have empty seats here. It's just Mary Hope and I.
Just.
Return to the OG way that we were doing this, right? No, exactly. Correct. We do have ChatGPT here, though, so they're a special guest, right? Because they're helping us.
We can't do anything without ChatGPT anymore.
Already becoming super dependent upon AI, and our brains are going to turn into nothing soon, so it's good. But we wanted to talk today a little bit about when you're just getting into real estate, right? What does that look like? The reality of it. We've talked about it sort of tangentially through conversations with guests and everything, but we've got a list of very specific questions that we think would be helpful for anybody who's looking to get in or, just figuring it out.
And as we were talking, as we mentioned, we've talked to so many amazing agents who have started from scratch and done amazingly.
Yep.
And that's very inspiring. And I'm sure, actually, I had someone just last night who just finished their class, and they're like, I've been watching your podcast. I'm so excited. And I think so many things are lost in translation of really what it takes.
Yep.
So we can look at an amazing story from now seeing the final product.
Yep.
But I think it's so important. It's kind of like we always joke, like, I want to get into real estate because I like homes and I like HGTV,
right?
Which is great. And that's why we have such an amazing business, because everybody is in homes.
Yep.
They live in homes. They want a home. They rent a home.
Yeah.
So we have one of the biggest commodities that everybody wants and needs.
Yeah.
So, of course, everybody is interested in it. Yet, I think there's a lot of myths around it.
Mm-hmm.
I know I had my opinions.
Yeah.
And so this whole podcast is Behind the Sign.
Right.
What is behind all this? What does that entail? The reality of it, I like to be blunt and honest. So I thought you could ask me questions and I will just give them to people.
And I think, what you're touching on too is something that's not necessarily unique or specific just to real estate, right?
Absolutely.
I think everybody who gets into any line of work who has an interest or a passion, whenever they're going after, they have a bit of sort of rose-colored glasses on initially, right? Because there's some alluring aspect of it that feels like a right fit.
Right.
And then you get into it and you realize that, like, either you're going to find that connective tissue that's going to keep you in it, right? Yeah. But you are going to realize it's not going to be what you expect it to be from the outset. It's going to change once you see how things work on the inside.
Well, and I think so many people walk into real estate from a regular job, from a 9-to-5, W-2 employee kind of, which there's a reason they're wanting to leave that.
Yeah.
Yet the entrepreneur world, you can't just plug in, push start, and there it is.
Right.
And so I think that's kind of where we were like, there's so many opportunities. We have watched people's lives be changed by it, and our lives be changed by it, or we wouldn't still be in it.
Yeah.
Yet I think it's so important for people to realize what it is, not just to scare people away from doing it. That's not the point, because my job is the opposite.
Yes.
I'm supposed to be bringing people in. And I think there's people out there that may not even think about real estate because they don't think they are that type.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there are so many opportunities here that they might not realize, and it might be their answer to what they've been looking for.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yeah. All right, great. Well, ready to dive in?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Bring it on.
All right, first question we got here. And we already kind of touched on this.
Yeah.
What are some common misconceptions people have about starting a career in real estate, would you say?
I think the biggest misconception is that we open doors and look at pretty houses and we like seeing houses.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, that's part of it. That is not a business in real estate.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the functions of being in real estate and providing service to our clients.
Yeah.
Our main career, our main job is to generate leads so that we can have the business.
Right.
So I think the misconception is I've always wanted to, or the reason people jump in is I've always wanted and thought about real estate. I love homes. I love touring homes. I love the idea of staging homes. I like everything about real estate. So why not do it?
Right. Yep.
Which
But
which is part of it.
sure. Yeah. But getting the opportunity to open those doors and enter those homes is really where the work comes in.
Yes.
Right. And that's I think what is the big misconception. It's like,
Absolutely.
oh, I get licensed and now things are going to just start happening. Right.
Yes. Well, and and that's where I think the misconception is it's like another job that you push go and you start
Right.
just doing the job of a real estate agent. I know
Yeah.
our agents are like, okay, now where do I go? When they're starting, and it's like, slow down. And I did the same thing. I remember my mentor was Darlene Lynch 16 years ago. And I remember sitting in her office. Like most agents, I was pretty confident about myself. And
Well,
there
you got to
was,
be to start.
yes,
You know.
absolutely. And she said, okay, I want you to build a database. I'm like, yeah, okay. She's like, no, I want you to put them in a program. I don't even know if we had a program right then, but I need you to decide who your people are. And I'm like, well, that's not selling real estate.
Right.
Like, I really, when I think back of my mentality, and then the second thing she told me to do was build a list of providers that you could offer to people, meaning plumbers, electricians, to provide services to people so that you are giving to people before you're asking for the sale. So anyway,
Yep.
I disagreed with her.
Sure.
Anyway.
Young ingenue. Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So I think that is the misconception. And we don't like to be Debbie Downers because it's an amazing opportunity that we do get.
Right.
And there's so many steps before you step foot into a single door. So
yeah,
I think that's the biggest misconception is I just show houses.
Yeah.
And I like touring houses. I like people.
Yeah. Which I think those are all, again, sort of that like outside looking in, rose-colored glasses view of the job. And that is certainly part of the job. But the reality is that the work that goes into allowing you to do that part of the job is really what the work is, if there's work.
Another misconception. You can make a lot of money really quickly in real estate. There you go.
Yep. Sure. Okay. That's a good one. Okay. Well, so that leads well into this question then. Can you break down how commissions and commission splits typically work for new agents? Like, how do you get paid as an agent, right?
Yeah.
What is commission and how is that something that's determined by the brokerage, right? And by the relationship you have with the client.
So that we have to step back even one step further to understand what is a real estate agent, a licensed agent. When you're a nurse, you get your RN license and then you go get a job in that career. This is a little different. So when you pass your exam, you're allowed to hang your license as a real estate agent in a brokerage. So you can't just buy and sell real estate without being under the umbrella of a brokerage. The reason is there is the real estate commission. There are rules and laws that you have to abide by, and a broker of that brokerage is responsible for your actions.
Right.
So you need to go under the umbrella of a brokerage. That doesn't mean that you are employed by that brokerage.
Right. It's a relationship.
It's a relationship. Your license is hung with that agency. You are still an independent contractor. The way I tell people is we work for you. Not everybody likes that word, but I believe as the staff, the employees of a brokerage, our pay comes from our agent, so we work for you. And, of course, like I said, the umbrella of the brokerage, we have to make sure that you're abiding by the rules of the brokerage because it's our responsibility.
Right. Yeah.
So that's the beginning step. Second of all, every office, because they have a brokerage and buildings and people to support you in training and education, there is a percentage they will take from your commission. And actually, I just said that the wrong way. That the brokerage receives a commission. You get a portion of that.
Right.
So when you get a commission, you've closed on your first property, so exciting. The average commission is about $12,000, but let's use $10,000 as
easy numbers.
Easy numbers.
Yeah.
That check is written out to your brokerage, for example, Keller Williams Metropolitan.
Right.
Then there is a split of what you get and what your brokerage gets.
Mhm.
And every office is different, and that's something that you need to discuss depending on what they're providing. Just like agents charge a certain percentage
Right.
for their services. Or when you go to a doctor, you pay certain services. A lawyer is a great one. You're going to pay per hour at a higher level if you have higher service or more professional. Anyway, so you will receive a commission. Sorry, the brokerage receives a commission. You get a portion of that. That's usually more than the brokerage.
Yep. Right.
If you don't, that's a whole different conversation.
Right.
And then there are a few fees, usually transactional fees, but very small. And then you receive that. But you're receiving that as an independent contractor. They're not pulling out all of the taxes and
Right.
all of that. So at the end of the year, you are filing as an independent contractor, and you get to expense everything, and you get to pay your own taxes.
The fun part. Yeah.
The fun part,
Right.
that also is another big mistake of realtors, to not pay taxes.
So just to sort of break that down.
Yeah.
So I get my license. I can't operate with just my license.
No.
I have to go to a broker.
Correct.
A brokerage is the formal term of the place in which the broker resides.
Yep.
Right. That broker is then responsible for all of the legal aspects of a transaction, right? Which you don't have to be, well, not that you don't have to worry about, but at the end of the day,
they are managing
That's right.
and have supervision over every transaction.
Right. Right.
So you are actually, and this is something that I think even realtors forget, even though they write it on their contracts every single time we write a contract, the client is in a contract with the brokerage.
Right.
With a designated agent in that brokerage. If it's a designated agent, but we won't go there. But when an agent writes a contract, it's a contract between this client and the brokerage. That's why from that, the client or the seller or the buyer pay the brokerage.
Right.
Because all funds have to come through the brokerage.
Yeah.
So I know that's the legalistic, but I think it's important.
It does, because I think you're right. And I think when you were wording how an agent gets paid, right? And you had to sort of backstep.
Absolutely.
Because you're right. It comes to the brokerage and is disseminated to the agents.
And it's hard because
under the brokerage.
The agent is doing all the work up to it. We're supervising it.
Right.
However, the agent's the one at the closing table usually and receives the check.
Right.
But if you look at it, it says Keller Williams Metropolitan or whatever the brokerage is. So they can't go to their
Right.
You can't take that check and bring it to the bank.
I mean, at the end of the day, real estate agents are just conduits for the transaction process of buying or selling a home, right?
Yep.
So the connective tissue and the overlap between agents and brokerage is sometimes maybe hard to break apart, but it is a relationship that needs to be there unless you have your own broker license, right? Which is another whole.
That's a whole different thing, and you need to have. There's a lot of elements to that, not just getting your broker's license.
Right. Yeah.
I have my broker's license. I have no intention or any desire to run my own brokerage.
Exactly.
Because that's not all it entails.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. So this is a good lead in for the next question.
Oh, good.
How important?
Thanks, ChatGPT.
I know, right? How important is it to choose the right brokerage when you're a new agent, and what should you look for in a brokerage?
So that's an interesting question because we did it completely opposite. I was just lucky enough. I didn't know what I was looking for.
That's right. You just kind of stumbled in
I
here.
stumbled in with, and I remember in my real estate classes, my teacher saying, make sure you're interviewing the brokerage is not interviewing you.
Right.
So I did remember that. And I did have questions that I came to.
Yeah.
So I didn't, someone recommended this place. I talked to Mark Mulcahy and he answered my questions, I guess, well enough that I didn't look other places. You did the opposite. You talked to how many brokerages?
12.
Okay, there you go.
Yep.
That's a little bit. Yeah, there's are the difference of our personality. I would never have had the patience, bandwidth, or patience. It's all patience.
Well, I mean, at the end of the day, I had similar instructions from my instructor when I was getting licensing, was like, go and interview them, right?
Yeah.
Like, make sure that they're a good fit for you.
We just interpreted
Which,
it different.
yeah, no, well, and the class that I was taking at the time was held by another brokerage.
Yeah.
And so I thought like, oh, well, this makes sense, right? Like I'm going to saddle up with this brokerage. And what became an important point for me was um, I I took this industry to be one that was very social, in that you got to be working hand in hand with other agents all the time, right? So there's
Yep.
just nothing but communication between agents. So for me, I wanted to see, okay, well, what caliber and quality of character
Mm-hmm.
are the other agents at these various brokerages like?
Yes.
And so I reached out directly. I mean, I went to 12 different brokerages, but I reached out to, gosh, I don't know, even remember, probably 20 or 30 different agents from
Agents.
the different
Okay,
brokerages. Yeah,
individual agents.
individual agents, because I wanted to know, I said, and especially some who like were at brokerages that I was considering, but had made a move. And I want to know, hey, how'd that work, right? Like what made you make
Yes.
the move, and what was the good, what was the bad at
Yep.
each of these, right? Just so that I could try to make some kind of an informed analysis
Yep.
before talking to the brokerages. And there were very few agents that responded, I will say.
Interesting.
And I also found that to be difficult, which is why this podcast I think is an important one, because I then turned to online, right? Like I went online to just
Yep.
try and see, like, can somebody give me an inside scoop on what it's like to really do this and where's the best place to go? And I couldn't really get any good information.
And how many years ago was that?
It was summer into fall of 2022.
Okay. And now you would get 10 times more opinions.
Oh,
Like
sure.
just
Oh,
the
yeah.
way the internet already,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can just go, I mean, just leave.
But a lot of it too was skewed, and you could tell because
Yeah.
a lot of it was sort of biased to, like, the brokerage that they worked at, right?
Of course.
And it was sort of like, well, come on in. It was sort of almost a recruitment technique
Yes.
for offering
Yeah.
information, right? And but it was done in a way that was sort of like thinly veiled. Whereas it's like, we know we're doing a podcast here. We work at a brokerage. We'd love to have you come join us. But at
Yeah.
the end of the day, you got to go where the right fit is.
Yep.
Right?
And so when I started thinking about that question, what you should be looking for, I think you hit on something. You need to be at a brokerage that you know they care about you.
Mhm.
And I know that sounds silly and that's not business oriented, that's not numbers. And it's an entrepreneur business that you're running your own business.
Mhm.
And if the people who are guiding and directing and training you, which hopefully they are, I mean, that's kind of the basis.
Yeah.
If they don't care for or are invested in your success
Mhm.
and really care about you becoming the best version of yourself within this
Mhm.
career, it will probably not work.
Yeah.
So because, like I said, I always tell people, anyone can teach you how to write a PNS.
Mhm.
I hope so.
Purchase and sale
Oh,
agreement.
sorry, purchase and sales agreement. Anybody can write contract, and you learn a lot of that in your classes of real estate, like what's the legal thing, and the craft and the science and the art of real estate is a whole different world.
Yeah, it's nuanced.
And it's interesting because we have a bunch of mentors and different agents that help us out in our training, and everybody does it differently.
Mhm.
And so you can get overwhelmed. So that would be the first thing I would say is make sure whomever you're working with, they care about you.
Mhm.
And I think that's probably why I didn't start looking at other places when I talked to
You
Mark.
felt it right away, right? Yeah.
It made sense to me.
Mhm.
Whatever. I was like, okay, I didn't even realize what real estate was about. And you just showed me what I didn't even know I needed to know.
Yeah. Mhm.
And that made sense.
Well, whether you're interviewing for a new job or you're going on a first date, right? Like it's all about the connective tissue.
It's the
you're
connective
having.
tissue.
And it's funny because when I was going around to these other brokerages, it was the first time that it brought me back to like high school. Because in high school, I think it was freshman year, I decided, you know what? I like baseball. I'm going to try being on the baseball team, playing baseball, right? I'd never played baseball before, ever. Maybe softball when I was like in
Yeah.
grade school, right? But I get on the team and everybody who's on the team has been playing baseball probably since second grade. They can throw, they can catch, they can hit. They already know how to do all these things.
Yeah.
And I got in there And the coaches, instead of actually like coaching me and training me as to like how to do these things, they kind of just benched me because the time it was going to take to try to like train me just wasn't
Sure.
of value to them. They wanted to focus on the guys who already do
Top
everything,
agents.
right? And I felt the sense of that when I went to some brokerages. Here I am, freshly licensed, brand new to real
Great
estate,
potential.
don't know anything, great potential, right? But there were brokerages that definitely sort of had this, come back in a few years when you've had some experience and then we can talk, right?
Well, they're lost, so
Yeah,
there you go.
right. But that's the kind of thing where it's like,
Yeah.
you walk in and different brokerages are
Yeah.
looking for different agents. So
Absolutely. And to kind of that pairs right into what the second thing I was going to say is make sure the brokerage understands your goals in real estate
mm-hmm.
and has a plan and a system to train you in that. Meaning, and the reason I say that, it goes back to my interview with Mark from the very beginning. At that time, I was wanting to do this very part-time.
Mm-hmm.
I was not going to be a full-time agent. I had 5 kids under 10.
Yeah.
So, yeah, 5 kids
Okay.
under 10. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the oldest was 10 or 11. My youngest was 2. And so I made it very clear to him. I said, I want to do this very part-time, a few deals a year.
Mhm.
I would love that. I really want to challenge myself. And he's like, okay, then do a few deals a year.
Yeah.
We're here to support you. And I remember being worried that they wouldn't want me.
Sure.
And I also know now if I had said, I need to do 12 transactions in this year or I can't stay in this business,
Mm-hmm.
I know they would have said, okay, these are the steps.
Yeah.
So I think asking the brokerage what their system is for their training,
Mm-hmm.
what their expectations are. I would say right now about 75% of all agents coming in are dual career.
Mm-hmm.
Most people can't quit their other job.
Sure.
And I can tell you, if you're wanting to keep your full-time job and jump into this and, be able to quit the other one in 6 months, it's not impossible and it's very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just being very honest.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is you're going to have to work doubly hard. I was just talking to Tess Crane, who was on our podcast.
Right.
And she was dual career. She was a bartender, if you remember.
Yeah.
And I said, and she showed up for new agent training every single day.
Mm.
And I said, well, how did you do that? She goes, I had to change my schedule. I worked 80 hours those years.
Yeah.
So is it possible? Absolutely. She's one of our top agents. And she was able to quit her job after a certain amount of time. And she had to sacrifice a lot during that time.
Yeah.
So I think honesty from a brokerage of what it's going to be.
Yeah.
A system of how you're going to be trained in this and who's going to be training you, and then people who care about you.
Yeah.
Another really practical thing, and this is, again, I'm a little biased, but I think having a cap on how much you contribute to a brokerage every year. We didn't talk about caps.
Yeah.
We talked about splits. But a lot of offices have X amount that after you contribute that amount in 12 months,
Yeah.
you don't owe the office anything else.
So I was going to actually jump in on that because, in part of going to the 12 different brokerages, and I didn't even realize this from the outset, it was just through the process of discovery of actually doing this, because we're not allowed to talk about commission splits,
Nope.
right? It's not something that you want to be airing out to the world,
No.
difference between brokerage to brokerage. However, if you are a new agent and you do go to these brokerages, they will tell you what their commission splits and how
Yep.
they're financially structured. And so it does behoove you because now you can take and say, okay, this one's offering this one's offering this. Let's do the math, right? And see which one feels like the better route for you because they're all a little different, right?
And some of them are very complicated.
Right.
So you just have to make sure doing that. However, the cap, and the reason I say that is it really changes the whole tone of the brokerage. And this sounds silly, but it really does. And I've seen it from a leadership perspective now. It even is, I'm observing it at such a higher level. It really protects your culture. The reason being is we can only make X amount off of no matter how well you do.
Right.
That means also the new agents have the potential to make that.
Mhm.
It also means our top agents are probably going to be giving that top amount, that cap, every year.
Right.
And if they are not of the culture
Mm-hmm.
and not um, a good asset to the company,
Yeah.
it's a lot easier to say this is not a good partnership and let
Right.
them go if they are only worth X amount.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's hard not to say numbers, but I don't. But it's a reality
Right.
that
Well,
if our top agents make us so much more money, because
right.
if there's no cap, some agents make 500,000 to 600,000,
Mm-hmm.
and even if your split is 10, they're only taking 10%.
Mm-hmm.
That's $50,000 to $60,000 a year minimum.
Yeah.
Plus international royalties, which also are capped and all that stuff. It's going to be really hard for leadership not to cater to those top agents.
Right. Yeah.
No matter how much you can be the best person,
Mm-hmm.
it's a business.
Right.
And if this person's able to make $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 for you,
Yeah.
it's going to be hard to put the energy and effort into our new agents.
Right. Well, and this is part of, I think, what makes Keller Williams very unique in that sense, right? Is that at the end of the day, it's sort of everybody has an even playing field to be coming from on this. And you're right. If somebody comes in and they're a bad fit culturally, or they're a bad actor and they're doing something that is not representative of the values and the culture of the brokerage, then it's an easy way to sort of say, sorry,
Yep.
but this is where we split ways,
Yep.
because you're not saying goodbye as a business to some
Yep.
large, producer.
Well, and not to get into the weeds too much, we have the cap, but the split as well. In Keller Williams, we all have the same split.
Mm-hmm.
So our new agents are making the same amount on their commission as our experienced agents.
Right.
Which, in my opinion, I feel like, well, newer agents need it way more than our top agents.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Right.
that's kind of tongue in cheek, but that's the reality.
Mm.
Which a lot of times there is a tiered thing.
Right.
So that's another element. Another important element, and it's a little unique to us, but I think it's something that I think people don't realize, is to have an opportunity for part ownership in the company.
Right.
Ours is profit share. We give about 45% of all of our profit back to our agents.
Mm-hmm.
That also keeps us in check of how much we're spending. But I think that's back to our culture of our agents are part owners in this company.
Right.
Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And then last of all, you need a company that's focused on education. New agent, of course, that's important. And you have to have the right people training you and guiding you. And a lot of people say, oh, Keller Williams is great for new agents. I would argue education is way more important once you get into the business and start building it, because
then you know how to utilize what
you can use. And it's a change of thought of not just, hey, I'm buying and selling houses, but now this is my career. We want you to build a business and a company within our business.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to do that, if you don't have an economic model, if you don't have financials, and you don't know that you have to put money aside for your taxes, which is one of the biggest downfalls of every agent that starts getting productive. There's been a lot of agents in IRS jail.
Yeah, right.
But you need to have somebody that's able to direct you to that next step, because we have ceilings.
Yeah.
Every entrepreneur has ceilings. And I always talk to people. People are like, why do you still, why didn't you get your broker's license? Just move on your own. You know how to, we love how you buy and sell. Great.
Right.
And every time I hit a ceiling, I would walk into one of my leaders and say, okay, here's where I'm at. What's the next step? And they would guide me.
Right.
And we've joked about it. I walked into Mark. He said, hire a full-time admin, and my business doubled from 32 transactions to 61.
Yep.
Oh,
whoops. Yeah.
do you think it was okay? Do you think it was worthwhile, that couple grand
Yeah. Right.
that I was giving to the brokerage?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, for me, that is where
the ROI is present.
Well,
if
you have people you trust, again, to the people, right? The people you trust, and they're in a place that they can help you grow.
Yeah.
So my title is team leader, which is kind of funky and people don't understand, because I'm not the principal broker.
Right.
I'm a broker, but I don't want to be the principal broker. Yeah. The way I see my job is as a growth leader, strategic growth leader, meaning I want to help our agents say, okay, here's where you're at. It could be a brand new agent. Now let's get you into production. Okay, I now have been able to cap, which is about 10 to 12 transactions. Now what? Now you need leverage.
Right.
My meetings with my agents every day is let's make a business plan. Just was having a couple yesterday, like, okay, you're doing this amount, this is wonderful, and you're burnt out. What leverage do you need? Because you will get exhausted in this business. Agents are really bad at letting go of things because it's their baby, it's their business.
Yeah.
Trust me, I had a big baby of my business, and I had to let it go and hand it over to my husband and my daughter and my other team member. Us agents are take it very personally.
Well, because you built it personally. You are
It is our business.
You are the business. The business is you, right? So
Yes.
you're inexplicably linked, and there's just
So you need, no matter how good you're at selling real estate, you can make a mess out of a business
right.
because we're not business owners. If we're a really good real estate agent, we're probably not a really good business owner.
Okay, that's we could do a whole episode just on that, right? Sort of
Absolutely.
split dichotomy of sort of what you need to succeed, but also what can tank you and how it's sort
Yeah.
of
One of my top agents who has a team, bringing in an admin, described us agents as herding cats. And I said, yeah, that's probably a good description because we have so much love and drive for our clients and all of that. But there's a lot of parts to this that people don't realize. And if you can't get guided and have the humility to know you don't know everything, you're going to hit your ceiling and you won't go past that.
Yeah.
You know, there's so much potential, and I'm so relieved that I had mentors to guide me through that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so we got about 3 questions in out of our 8, but I think we're at time. So let's maybe break this into a 2-parter. What do
Absolutely.
you think? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And we want to know what's helpful for you, right? I was out doing photos with a new agent, first listing yesterday, and he said to me, I just started listening to the podcast, and
That's
and
good.
I was like, great, that's awesome. And I said, I'm glad, is it helpful? He was like, oh yeah, absolutely. So we want to hear that
Yeah.
from you. So if you guys want to just message us, leave us something in the comments here on YouTube, or if you're listening on Spotify, you can always go to the email at the end of the episode here. I believe it's info@kwmetro.com, and reach out because we'd
Absolutely.
love to know what we can sort of bring
Well,
to the table.
yeah. And
Yeah.
Andrew and I could talk all day long every day, and I know you guys don't really want that. But if there's things like this that you want, we would love to. We want to bring on people who are helpful to you. Someone was just telling me how appreciative they were of us bringing in partners, because those are the things that people don't fully understand, the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
But
And I think there are a lot of podcasts. There are definitely a lot of real estate podcasts out there.
yes.
And a lot of them speak at very sort of high levels,
Yep.
luxury markets, big thing, there's a lot of sort of,
Marketing and
right.
the next best thing.
Whereas like it is so sort of an under provided community of those who are just, even if you're not just getting started, even if you've been doing this for 2, 3, 4 years, but you're still kind of in that like, swirl of trying to build up, or you're part-time and you're, it's like, that's the kind of stuff that I think is really lacking,
Well, and you know what? Not to belabor this, but I think also just from listening and interviewing these agents and talking on this podcast, it's reiterated to me that no matter where technology takes us, the excitement, the marketing, the videography and Facebook and TikTok, like what should I do? I feel like I'm not getting traction. All this stuff, there's so much out there.
Yeah.
It comes back down to the same exact business that Bill Weidecker was doing at 21 years old.
Well, and I know
It really was.
I know you just said the vision speech was given again recently, right?
Yes.
And the vision speech is something where Bill and Alan talk about their sort of, evaluation of the market from the previous year and where they think it's going to go in the coming year. But I didn't go to the most recent one, but for the previous 2 years, they have a slide that comes up, and the stat is where business is generated from, right? Top and number 1, always by head and shoulders, is sphere of influence. The people you
And guess
know,
what happened
right?
this year?
No.
It's the same.
Okay. I was gonna say, I was like, what?
You're like, shh.
Little hole in my lip,
Uh-oh,
right?
we're going to have to
Yeah.
delete that part.
It's sphere, right? Is online. And then number 2 is, number 1 is sphere. Number 2, it just says online.
Yeah.
which is incredibly broad.
Yeah.
And yes, it is an
And
important.
they might be switched a little bit, but actually it might be switched to online. I don't remember, but
Oh,
but it's what does online mean?
well, yeah, online encompasses a lot,
Yeah.
right? But I
Anyway,
think at the end of the day, it's a belly to belly business.
It is an ancient
social.
business that we're still doing the same thing.
Right.
And no matter what technology brings, no matter what the newest, best, and we're going to talk about leads and all that.
Mhm.
Long story short, you still have to do the exact same thing you had to do 40, 50 years ago. That's not ancient, but
Right.
in this industry, it is.
Mhm.
That you just have to do the work
Yeah.
and be a person who wants to take care of other people
Yeah.
and be honest and truthful and genuine, all the human
Yeah.
components of being a good
Serious
person.
things, yeah. Mhm.
You know, so I'm excited. I'm excited to continue with this conversation. And as Andrew said, if you have any thoughts and ideas of what you would like us to bring, we're going to bring in new agents and
Yeah.
experienced agents, but we would like to know from you what you'd like to bring. And I'm excited.
Great.
So,
Awesome.
good.
Well, stay tuned for part 2, and we'll see you on the next one.
See you later. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Behind the Sign, Real Stories from Real Estate.
We hope you enjoyed today's conversation and gained a little insight into the world behind those for sale signs.
Today's episode was brought to you by Keller Williams Realty Metropolitan, proudly serving New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, and Massachusetts. A special thank you to our agents, leadership, and partners at KW Metro for their continued support.
And thanks to you, our amazing listeners and viewers. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.
Leave us a review or comment. We love hearing your feedback, and it helps more people discover the show.
And if you have a real estate story you'd like to share or a question you want answered on a future episode, reach out to us at metro.kw.com or find us on Instagram, handle @KWMetroNH.
Until next time, we'll see you
Behind the sign.